If you think elections are useless, then you must not be listening to Amanda Nelson, or Amanda's Mild Takes as everyone knows her. I got the chance to sit down with her to talk about her incredible new organization, Y'all Vote, which is working to bring attention to southern state legislative races. Because if you didn't know, that's where we take down gerrymandering. So here's our conversation.
Let's get started. How did you come up with doing Y'all Vote? Where did that come from? Why did you do it?
As I'm sure everyone knows, the Voting Rights Act was gutted recently. Different sections of the Voting Rights Act have been under attack for a lot of years. But the Louisiana versus Kelly decision from April ended the last teeth that the Voting Rights Act had. And, as we've all seen, as soon as that was overturned by the Supreme Court, all of the southern states started redrawing their maps to eliminate their majority minority districts and get rid of their Black congressional representation in Congress. I knew that was going to happen. We all knew that was going to happen, right? Like Chief Justice John Roberts, this has been his goal since he was in the Reagan administration. As soon as they got this case, I think everybody was like, all right, well, we're screwed. So the day after the case was decided, I went to bed that night just bereft. Not depressed, but in my feelings about it. And I was like, we've got to do something. Absent of congressional legislation to overturn partisan gerrymandering entirely. And God knows when we could get to that. There's got to be something else we can do. So I went to sleep and then I woke up at 4 a.m. with this turkey timer of duh, it's the state houses. You know this. Because your state houses draw your maps. The people who run your state capitol, your governor, your state house, your state senate are the ones who decide what your congressional representation is. In the South, a lot of the states, especially in the deep South, have supermajorities of Republicans. So it's really hard to be competitive as a Democratic Party in the South. On top of that, the party as a whole hasn't really supported the region in a really long time, which leads to this sort of year after year of decay. And I thought, well, now things are different. Now we don't have the VRA and people are pissed off. So that's a big one. Two, we also have social media and you and me and all of these people who in the past couple of years have built these huge millions and millions of people audience wide platforms to draw attention to this sort of thing and help people understand why the down ballot matters and to help people know when the elections are and to promote the candidates and all of that. And so I thought, let's just do that and see what happens. And I want to do it especially in the South, pull together content creators to talk about this, flipping state houses in the South specifically, because in 2030, we have another census. And when that happens, mostly blue states like California, Illinois, and New York, they've lost population, so they're going to lose representation in Congress. And those seats will be shifted to southern states mostly. Texas, Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina. We really, really need more political power in those states in advance of 2030. So it's not just, I want a bunch of content creators in the South talking about flipping state houses this year. I want them talking about it for 5 years and then longer because, it took the right 40 years to get control of the South. So we can't expect an instant turnaround. So I launched it the next day. I sent very tearful voice notes to some of my co-founders, Anna from Bull City Anna and Kate Barr from the Can't Win Victory Fund. It was I think this is something we should try, guys. I don't know. You tell me if it's dumb. And they were like, no, it's great. Let's do it. So we launched it 6 hours later. And that's where we are.
That's amazing. It's amazing because my mom always is talking about the power of one and how we all have the power to make a difference. And you really took that and ran with it in a way that you probably didn't expect to a month ago.
I did not. I've never thought of myself as a founder of anything or a nonprofit or an organizer even. I mean, I understand for all of us who do this sort of work online, there is an aspect of digital organizing to all of it. We are trying to drive votes and change minds and influence people and all of that. But it's not the same as organizer on the ground. Grassroots organizers have such a huge job. And I've always thought of myself more as somebody who's here to amplify those efforts. And that is really what we're doing. I mean, Y'all Vote is not obviously all of these content creators who we've gathered together. We have 500 of them now across every state in the South. All of them are on the ground, right? But not all of them are political. A lot of these content creators just wanted to do something, anything. They just needed to do something. Some of them have very small accounts, 20, 30 followers that are their neighbors or that are following them for gardening tips or whatever. And those are the people that I want because those are the people who can actually influence their neighbors. I have a floppity jillion followers, so do you. And we can be as influential as we can be, and that's fine on a national stage. But when it comes to turning out voters in Alabama, I need someone talking about gardening in Alabama, So that level of organizing I'm not used to doing. We're very much building this plane as we fly it, but the response to it has been amazing. In 6 weeks, we've raised over $100,000 for these really targeted seats. Yeah. One of the crying voice notes that I sent was to Brian, one of the founders of Oath.vote. If y'all aren't familiar, it's a fundraising platform. They use data analytics to figure out the most impactful seats for your dollar. If you want to give $10 to a candidate somewhere, here are the places where that money is going to go the farthest. And so I called him and was like, I've got this idea. I think we can point fundraising efforts at these seats. Do you think there's something here? And he was like, I've been working on this for a year. Since the Supreme Court took this case, we've been ready for this to happen. I have 100 target seats in the South. We could launch this tomorrow. And I was like, great, bet, let's go. So we've raised $105,000 so far for those 100 seats. Most of it is for Texas, which is great because Texas and Florida have the most competitive seats. And yeah, that's what we're working on.
It's just amazing hearing the whole story and how you did it because people just don't think that that's possible. And they think, like, what can I do? I can't do anything. It's not worth me doing anything. I'm just going to say it doesn't matter and the world is over. And then to hear you being like, actually, no, I'm not going to do that and create this is kind of magic.
Yeah, it's a vehicle where anybody can do something. I will train you. We offer a couple of things to creators. If you're in the South, if you live in the South and you want to sign up, we will connect you with candidates. If you want to do that, you don't have to do that. We will give you a community, obviously. We have signal chats for every state. I know nobody wants another goddamn signal chat, but here we are. We have signal chats for every state. We have a main signal chat. So as people are making content about gerrymandering or calling attention to elections in Georgia or whatever, you can share it with your neighbors and then they will amplify for you. So like you'll see a lot more reposts and engagement because people in your area are helping you do that. And then the bigger accounts like mine and my founders will give you training. So like we will tell you how to grow your social media accounts. We will tell you how to make better content. We will tell you if that's something that you want. You don't have to do any of it. But if you join us and you're like, I don't know how to make a hook. I don't know how to get my neighbors interested in like this candidate running for Florida state seat, whatever. I'll help you with that because I know how to do that. So we've had a couple of Zoom trainings. I have a content calendar for you. If you just don't know where to start, we can give you an idea a week of stuff to post about. It doesn't all have to be super partisan. You can talk about how gerrymandering is dumb. Gerrymandering is dumb no matter who does it. It's not just Republicans. So you don't have to like draw a scarlet D on your chest or whatever if you live in a place where that's going to be a problem. But yeah, we're here to like support people who have decided that this doomy way of looking at things is no longer productive because it's not.
No, it's not. And what do you say to people who are like, there's no way that this candidate will win, or there's no way a Democrat can win here. Why should I vote? Why should I help them? Why should I donate to them?
Yeah, you're probably right. That's why the Can't Win Victory Fund exists and is a partner that I went to help me with this. Because, you know, a lot of these places like Marjorie Taylor Greene's old district, there are state Senate and state House districts within that area of Georgia, in northern Georgia, that are plus 60. That's not a flippable seat right now. But the way to think about it is not in the short term. We can't flip that in 2026. Maybe. However, if you continue to abandon those areas, you get this just cyclical constant decay. First of all, no one's going to run if you talk like that. No one's going to bother running because like no one's going to vote for me, whatever. So no one will run. If nobody runs, there's no money. There's no volunteers. There's no infrastructure. There's no permission. A lot of the way that people vote in the South is cultural. It doesn't have anything to do with policy. It has to do with how you were raised and what they're talking about in your church. So there's no permission structure for thinking any differently if we allow the Republican Party to just hold these seats, and not just hold the seats, but hold the conversation about the seats forever. So you need a brave person to raise their hand and run in the first place. So if you get someone who's willing to do that, that's a hero. And they deserve support from the party that they do not get. They don't get it, especially at the state level, because these state parties are not terribly resourced. And the resources that they do have, they're going to put into defending seats they think are competitive, which is not all of them. A lot of these state level races are gerrymandered as well. It's not just a congressional issue. So we want to support these candidates so that they run real races. And what that means is you're not just putting your name on a ballot. You are going out and you're knocking doors. You're having conversations. You are talking to the voters. You're giving them an option. I was talking to Jerry Green. She's running for governor in Tennessee, but she was talking about this exact thing in the state house race in Tennessee. And it was like a 1,400% increase in Democratic turnout in one of her districts just because a Democrat bothered to run. So giving people a choice matters, giving them, again, the permission structure of like, yeah, it's fine. You can vote for a Democrat. I'm not the devil. You know, like I go to church with you. I'm your neighbor. You know me. You know I'm not evil. You know I'm not whatever. So all of that is important. And then over time, that's how you build a bench. Because the more people in your neighborhood who see it's okay for a Democrat to run, it's okay for me to put a yard sign for a Democrat in my yard. No one's going to throw eggs at me, you know, whatever. And the longer that like the state party sees that someone like that can raise money, even if it comes from an organization like mine, the more support they'll get. And then instead of this downward spiral of decay, you get an upward spiral of building a bench. And building the bench is how you get state level candidates and national candidates. You start with like someone who's running for mayor in a small town in Alabama. Then that person can run for state senate and then governor and then Congress and then, you know, whatever. If we're not doing this, if we're just allowing these ruby red, R plus 60, whatever places where a Democrat can't win and all of that, if we just keep letting that narrative run, eventually we lose federal candidates. Like we just don't have anyone interesting running at the top of the ticket. So that's a really long answer. I would give somebody who asked me that question a much shorter one, but just for all of the context.
Yeah, of course. And I think it's also worth noting that I was talking to my dad about this because I was really excited about what you're doing. And he was like, well, you know, your grandfather did this in Los Angeles. And I was like, what? This whole concept of what you're doing in the South was done in California, and that is
Yes.
how California turned blue. And so that I think is proof that what you're doing works and it has legs. There's precedent for this to be a thing and to make a difference.
Yeah, it's how Virginia changed as well. Virginia used to be a very Republican state. We're the capital of the Confederacy. This is not a state with like deep blue DSA heritage or anything like that.
Yeah.
But in 2017, there was a real opportunity, like a real path to flipping the state house of Virginia. And the States Project, which is another organization that focused on state level races, has a giving circle structure where they, get everything from like book clubs to celebrities and their friends to target their giving at one state house. And so they picked Virginia that cycle, and they made up the fundraising gap between the Democrats who were running to flip seats and the Republicans who were holding them. And we won. That's how Virginia flipped blue. And we've kept it, with some, like we just had a Republican governor we got rid of, whatever. We're like still probably a purple state, but we're on our way to being much more solidly blue. But without people focusing on the down ballot in a strategic way, it never would have happened. The majority of the Black population of this country lives in the South. So when we have these conversations that are like, it's not worth focusing on Louisiana, or it's not worth focusing on Mississippi or whatever, what you're saying is that you're willing to abandon like the seat of the civil rights movement to voter suppression and gerrymandering and apathy and decay. I'm not going to stand for that.
And there are so many in the South. I mean, you look at like how much of the South is actually Black and how much of the South is actually progressive. And it's so much more than have the power. I was just talking to Courtney Waters. I got to interview her. Oh my God, she's incredible. And she was just talking about how South Carolina is like 30% Black, and they have a super minority because of the way that it's gerrymandered. And so people think that representation equates to the people who live there. And that's just not the case with how Republicans run things and how they've been pushing for the disparity.
Yeah. And it's important that we change the narrative about the South in that way. You'll hear like when natural disasters happen, like in North Carolina, when Helene came through, well, that's what they voted for, that kind of stuff. That's what some of them voted for, maybe, but it's not what all of them voted for. And you can't generalize in that way. It's not helpful. So I do think we need to change the narrative around this idea that there are places in the country that are worth abandoning. I don't like that. It doesn't make any sense to me.
I think it goes hand in hand with the idea that like, oh, well, those people are illiterate, so they don't count, which I heard so much, especially when I was doing some coverage of Oklahoma. They were saying that constantly. And I was just like, that's not helpful. Just because someone has an accent doesn't mean that they feel a certain way or approach things a certain way or have a certain reading level. It's really amazing how people have these biases that carry them for who they're willing to support, even if it has nothing to do with values.
Yeah. And like, Oklahoma's, I think, 51st in education.
Yeah.
That's why they fired Ryan Waters, the Secretary of Education, who was like a nut. So it's not their fault. Like Republican policies are detrimental to the people who have to live and suffer under them for years and years and years. So maybe it's true. I don't know. Education in the South can be tough, but it's tough on purpose. It's tough because the Republicans who control those states have made it tough. And all of those have roots back to desegregation. Once segregation became illegal in the South, white families started pulling their kids out of public schools, started trying to defund public schools because they didn't want their kids going to schools with Black children. That's it. I mean, that isn't necessarily the attitude that most or even many Southerners have now, but that's the roots of it. And so I don't think that the curse of racism and the curse of conservative policies that is currently reigning over so much of the South is not a thing people have asked for.
Yeah. And a lot of people, especially in blue states, just decide that that's what it is.
Yeah. And it's worth pointing out, I think, that the most segregated school systems in the country are in California and New York. They're not in Alabama or Mississippi. There's this saying that I think is useful for people, especially in northern states, to help understand that in the South, white people are happy to have Black neighbors, but they don't want Black bosses. And everywhere else in the country, white people are happy to have Black bosses, but they don't want to have Black neighbors. And one is not better than the other. Like one version is not more okay than the other. Obviously, I'm not saying that racism in the South isn't especially bad. Of course it is. And historically bad, of course it is. But it permeates. And as the population, sorry, I'm putting history hat on now, but in the Great Migration, when the Black population started fleeing Jim Crow and going north and going west and going into the Midwest and into California, segregation followed. White communities, Oregon didn't let Black people move in. White communities continued the sort of stuff the South does. And that's true of voting as well. Fascism is tested in the South first. Project 2025, most of those policies were tested at the state level in Tennessee before they were written into a national recommendation document for the president. Stacey Abrams says, evil is born here, evil is tested here, and then exported to the rest of the country. So people in safe blue states, you can sit up there in Boston and think, oh, those backwards, whoever in Alabama, it's going to come for you too, if given enough time, if we don't do something about it.
Yeah, and I keep saying to people in blue states, because I look at elections at all levels of government, and I'll cover an election in a tiny town in Massachusetts, and it's red. The whole town is red. There might be a Democrat trying to run, but it's red. And then I tell people on social media, there are red dots in Massachusetts. They're like, no, there aren't. Congress is blue. I'm like, yeah, because the dots are small, but they're there. And they can permeate. And that's how we got to where we are, especially in terms of like school board and stuff that we learned. When those school boards started growing, they took back our rights, essentially.
Yeah. And there was Operation Red Map too. I talked at the beginning about the census in 2030 and how we need to be strategic about taking over state houses in advance of the census. That is the same thing the Republican Party did in 2010. And that is why Republicans control so many state houses. Because as part of the racialized backlash against the Obama administration, Karl Rove, probably a name most of your audience will recognize, a Republican operative who like still writes for the Wall Street Journal, he came up with this plan and this idea to really surgically target specific and strategic state houses in advance of the census so that once the census hit, they could gerrymander and maintain control of Congress. And that's exactly what they did. And it was like Indiana, North Carolina, a couple of states in the South and the Midwest. And it was like surgical precision. They are so good. Republicans are so good at voter suppression. It's the thing that they have been practicing since the Civil War. It's deep in their strategic bones, these ways of doing things. So again, it's not necessarily that Indiana is an extremely red state. I mean, of course, they vote for Republicans live there, whatever. But it is also true that they were made that way on purpose after Citizens United, with Citizens United money that the Republican Party took from billionaires in advance of the census. They spent very little because a state house seat is cheap. You can close the fundraising gap between the 100 seats we're targeting in the South and the Republicans who want those seats is only $4 million. Wow. For 100 seats. That's less than one congressional race that's competitive in this country. One. So the Republicans took that math and that money and that map and redrew the country in 2010. And we would like to do the same thing. But with social media, different. You know, I'm not the sort of person who's like, let's just constantly react to Republicans. Let's just constantly look at what they did and then do it ourselves. I hate this idea that we need a Project 2029 just because they had Project 2025. Stop. Like, have your own ideas. But it is also true that we have to do something about the census. So yeah, that's Operation Red Map.
Yeah, it's amazing watching how Republicans are so, it's not just that they're good, it's that we didn't see it. It's that there was the idea that we lived in this reality that things would always be moving forward. And so when that stopped happening, we were kind of blindsided. This one post that I've seen that's from Tumblr that's about the idea they kept putting little pebbles onto a river. And over time, they were able to dam the river because you're not paying attention to one little pebble. And now it's our job to take those pebbles out, but we have to do it as slowly and strategically as they did, because if we take a full bulldozer, we're still going to flood the town. Yeah. And I think that's a really good metaphor for what we have to do and how we have to do it. And I think that's what you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, there's a combination, I think, of after the Obama election the first time, I think Democrats got very awash in the glow of a post-racial utopia. And we just thought, like, it's fixed now. And then we abandoned the 50-state strategy and retreated to battleground states. And we've kind of been stuck there ever since. I mean, I think Ken Martin's doing a pretty good job of trying to reverse that. But it's going to take time. And, you know, he's got a lot of trust that he needs to rebuild in the party in general. And I think he does care about that and is prioritizing that. But it's going to take a while. But yeah, you're exactly right. We didn't get here because of Donald Trump. Like, we did not get to this position because of 2016. We got to this position really because of the backlash to 1964, you know, to the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. And the right has been systemically trying to reverse that one thing forever. And so the idea that we can just elect a black man and it'll be fine, that's just not real. That was a lie we told ourselves.
What do you say to people who want it to happen overnight? Because I know there are a lot of people who are like, change. Why didn't this happen immediately? Why did they pass this and this and this? And then you're like, but they couldn't?
I know that's a frustrating answer. You get the same sort of shit that I do, you know, when we push back on this, where people are like, that's just an excuse or whatever. It has never, ever been the case that American politics is revolutionary in that way. We are not a country that guillotines as badly as people want that to be different. It's just not. You're free to try it if you would like to go out and start some sort of, French Revolution. I will remind you that what came after the French Revolution was despotism and a dictator. So, like, we would just be out of a kettle and into the fire. But democracy as a concept requires hypervigilance. And nobody wants that to be true, right? You don't want to think, oh, I've got to spend the rest of my life caring about democracy. You do. And that is fundamental to American values, I fear. The right tries to claim the American identity, but in reality, the American identity is a multiracial functional democracy. And that requires constant upkeep, constant, not just every 4 years when you're voting for the top of the ticket. Every municipal election,
Every week.
your public education, yes, everything. Your civic engagement is your right as a person who lives in this country and also your duty. And if you don't like that, I cannot help you. Too bad.
Yeah, I always say election day is every Tuesday because it is. And your election next Tuesday might be the one that decides if you're going to have potholes filled, or if you're going to have ice come into your town and destroy it, or if you're going to have the next Democrat in Congress, because special elections also happen weekly. And it's trying to get people to like be excited about something that they think is only once every 4 years or once every 2 years. It's complicated.
Also, the Democratic Party has not done a great job of focusing on down ballot stuff. We like the big top of this ticket stuff, the sexy stuff. We like the president. We like the glamour. We like the show. And all of that is fine. But what we also have to like is the fact that Virginia having a blue governor means that we just got paid family leave in the state. And we're the first state in the South to have paid family leave. And the way that that will change the quality of life in this state cannot be understated. You know what I mean? We have to redefine what a win looks like as a party. And we have to redefine that not just for our party leadership, but for voters.
Yeah, I'll also say for party leadership, I think that Ken Martin has been he door knocks in tiny little elections. And I think that that's something that
here, I saw that man come to Tennessee to talk to state house leaders. And then I saw him go to Georgia to campaign for the public service commissioner or something, their water board. And I was like, dude, you've got my sword, man. Let's go. That's exactly what we need to be doing. Like, the more I see him down here, the more I'm like, respect.
I try to tell people that people want everything to happen in front of the camera. They want everything to happen exactly in the front place. And I'm like, to get to that place, we have to have the things behind the scenes. We have to have the door knocking. We have to have the things that are person to person. And you're not going to see that online because it becomes fake when it's online.
The RNC chair doesn't do that. The RNC
That's true too.
I don't even know name the RNC chair.
The RNC chair is
Laura Trump.
It was. Is it still?
I think she got bored and went off to go make a CD or something.
That sounds about right. Well, how do people get involved with Y'all Vote?
You can go to y'allvote.org if you would like to sign up. If you are a content creator of any kind or size or niche in a southern state, you can also give to our slate of targeted candidates on the site. So it's y'allvote.org. Yeah. And you can follow us on all this stuff.
Amazing. Thank you so much for this. I can't wait to see this grow. I can't wait to interview you again when you guys are the biggest thing in the South and winning all these elections and seeing how your progress goes.
Awesome. Thanks so much.